Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to uncover a truly radical shift in the world of psychology. We are diving headfirst into the family systems approach. So instead of looking at a single individual in complete isolation, this paradigm shifts our focus entirely to the interconnected unit of the whole family. We're going to treat the family as a dynamic system, a collection of mutually influential, deeply interdependent relationships. And to really teach ourselves how this works, we're going to start with a puzzle that we need to solve together.
Here is our mystery. A 13-year-old boy named Johnny suddenly develops severe behavioral problems, seemingly out of nowhere. Now, if we only look at Johnny, searching his brain or his personality for some internal defect, we're going to be completely stuck. We won't find the answer there. To solve this, we need a brand new way of thinking. We absolutely have to zoom out. That brings us to Section 1, the systemic paradigm shift. For decades, traditional psychology spent all its time looking for internal defects within a single patient. But today, we're training our eyes to see the entire interconnected family unit. We have to see the forest, not just a single tree.
Let's contrast the old way of thinking with the new. Traditionally, we are taught linear causality. This is your basic cause and effect logic, where event A directly causes event B. But in systems theory, we use a concept called circular causality. In a family loop, every single action is simultaneously both a cause and a response to other behaviors. It's just one continuous, interconnected cycle.
So the crucial takeaway here is that a single person's problem behavior is actually just a reflection of dysfunctional interactions within that broader family loop. In systemic therapy, Johnny isn't viewed as a defective child. He's what we call the identified patient. He's basically the designated family member whose symptoms have unconsciously emerged to try and restore equilibrium to a family system that is under severe stress. To really understand this, we have to look slightly outside mainstream psychology. Back in the 1950s, pioneers like Don Jackson started noticing that individual therapy was frequently being sabotaged by other family members. Around that same time, the child guidance movement realized they could actually prevent adult issues by stepping in and fixing childhood family tensions early on. This all culminated with the Palo Alto Group, who looked at communication itself as the root of dysfunction. They explored ideas like the double bind, which provided a vital stepping stone toward this new communications approach.
Moving into Section 2, core mechanics of family systems. Now that we understand the perspective shift, let's break down the actual rules that govern our families. Think of this as learning the physics of family relationships.
Just like in biology, families operate on homeostasis. They have these internal regulatory mechanisms that naturally want to keep the system in balance. Families use negative feedback loops to maintain the status quo and keep things exactly the way they are. Conversely, they'll use positive feedback loops when they need to disrupt that status quo and force the entire system to change and adapt.
Next up, we have boundaries. These are the invisible rules defining who participates in which family subsystem and exactly how they do it. Pathology, or dysfunction, often pops up when these boundaries break down. They might become overly loose, leaving everyone unhealthily enmeshed. Or, on the flip side, they might become overly rigid, leaving everyone totally disengaged and isolated from each other.
Now, when those boundaries break down, you'll frequently see a phenomenon called triangulation. Imagine two family members are in a conflict. Instead of resolving that tension directly, they form a coalition that draws in and then excludes a third member. It's basically an unconscious strategy to reduce the tension between the original two people by teaming up against a third.
To navigate all of this madness, an individual really needs differentiation of self. This is your psychological capacity to clearly define your own personal boundaries and self-regulate your emotions. You want to stay emotionally connected to the larger family system without completely losing your own individual identity. The ultimate goal here is holism, truly understanding that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Section 3, therapeutic models and techniques. When these mechanics break down, how do therapists actually step in and fix the system?
Well, it's fascinating because different therapeutic models target entirely different structural flaws. Bowen's model looks deep into the past at multi-generational triangles and differentiation. Meanwhile, Mnuchin's structural therapy focuses on immediate hierarchy. A therapist might literally force family members to change seats during a session just to alter their power dynamics. Then you have strategic therapy, which uses paradoxical intentions. They might actually tell a patient to continue their bad symptom just to force a shift in control. The Milan systemic model relies on circular questioning to map out family games, while the experiential model basically ignores theory entirely, favoring the raw, immediate emotional experience of the therapy session itself.
To actually apply these models, therapists use some very specific tools. They start by just observing interactions during the interview. Who takes turns talking? Who sits where? How do they handle disagreements? They might use a functional analysis to track the antecedents, behaviors, and consequences, the ABCs, that are keeping problem behaviors alive in the house. Interventions often include reframing a problem into more positive terms, using those paradoxical maneuvers we just talked about, or even guiding direct enactments where the family acts out their patterns right in the room so that therapists can modify behaviors in real time. And for complex ecological issues, multisystemic therapy, or MST, even extends these interventions out to the school and peer groups.
And these systemic interventions are highly effective and tailored to treat serious issues. For instance, MST is an incredibly well-established intervention for adolescent delinquency and conduct problems. Eating disorders, specifically anorexia nervosa, are frequently treated using systemic or behavioral family therapy. And for bipolar and mood disorders, family psychoeducation is heavily used to reduce what's called expressed emotion, which basically means hostility or criticism from the family. Reducing that is a major factor in preventing a patient's relapse.
Section 4, Culture, Ethics, and Limitations. Before we finally solve Johnny's mystery, we have to objectively examine the limitations of these approaches and the cultural lenses through which they operate. When applying all of this, we must neutrally observe the profound cultural considerations at play. Western therapeutic models often value individualism, so they might view a highly interdependent family as suffering from pathological enmeshment. However, many Asian, Latinx, and African American cultures view this deep interdependence, sometimes called familismo, as a vital source of resilience and strength. Plus, many non-Western cultures rely on hierarchical or patriarchal structures, and the goal of individuating from the family is seen as an undesirable loss of identity. It is a really fascinating variance in how human structures operate across the globe. A massive strength of this entire approach is that it beautifully avoids victim blaming, and it successfully identifies the real environmental variables that maintain a family's distress. But it definitely has limitations. It can be incredibly difficult to run rigorous, controlled research when your patient is an entire family rather than a single individual. Furthermore, some of these models still rely on untested assumptions, like the unproven belief that the exact way a family seats themselves in a room definitively reveals their hidden alliances.
Section 5. Solving the mystery of Johnny. All right, let's bring all these concepts together and return to our original mystery. We finally have the tools to understand what really happened to him.
By looking at the broader system instead of just the boy, the therapist uncovered a massive structural change. Johnny's aunt and cousins had recently moved into his home. Now, prior to this, Johnny held a crucial boundary and identity in the system. He was his mother's primary helper. But when the extended family moved in, it stressed the system, completely disrupted his boundaries, and displaced him from his role. Johnny wasn't fundamentally defective. His family's homeostasis had just been totally shattered.
So, how did systemic therapy actually fix this? Well, they didn't punish Johnny or treat him like a broken individual. First, they identified the structural change. Then, they worked with the whole unit to clarify the confusing new roles. And finally, they explicitly restored Johnny to his original caretaking role. And because the systemic balance was restored, Johnny's sudden behavioral issues simply vanished within a matter of months.
The system was the patient all along. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take this framework and apply it to your own life. Think about your own family boundaries. Who in your family system acts as the identified patient? And when you look at their behaviors, are they really just symptoms of an invisible, interconnected system that is unconsciously trying to restore its balance? Keep that in mind the next time you see a conflict, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.